There are two main types of loop in programming. We've seen the while loop already. Today we're going to be looking at the for loop. Let's say we had a list, maybe LST, and it has the values 1, 2, and 3. Now, what if we want to go through this list, one item at a time? We want to grab the 1 and then do something with it, and then we want to grab the 2 and do the same thing with it, and then the 3 and do the same thing with it. Well, we could use a while loop. We could use maybe a variable called I to keep track of the index of the list, and then we could do while I is less than the length of the list. Now, I don't think we've seen len before. Len just means the length of the list, so it will give us 3 because there are 3 items. Len also works with strings to see how many characters are in the string. But let's say while I is less than 3 in this case, so we've got 0 and then we're going to add 1 to it, so it'll be 1, add 1 to it, and it's going to be 2. We've got 0, 1, 2 are the correct indexes. And then we want to, first of all, let's have a variable called x equals the list at index I, like that. So we could do something else with this value or this variable. But for now, we just want to print x for the demonstration. And then we need to add 1 to I, like this. And then if we go ahead and run the program, we will see that we get the 1, 2, and 3. And if we change the values here, maybe A, B, C, we get those 3 values instead. If we were to then add a 4th item, it would just do the same thing, but with every item. Now, this is an option that would work, but it's got quite a lot to it, and there's a much simpler way, and that's the for loop that we spoken about at the start of the video. So let me just comment this out, multi-line comment, and we'll go underneath, we'll use a for loop, and we'll say for, and we want x this time, in LST, just like that. And then we've got another semicolon here to indicate the start of a code block, if you will. And then we can just do print x. So what we're doing here is the for and the in are just to indicate to Python, and the semicolon actually as well. The for, the in, and the semicolon are all to indicate the structure to Python so that Python can understand it. The x and the LST are the important bits. So x is a new variable that we are creating here. So this would be instead of doing x equals list I. And then we can use that variable down here. And then LST is just our list item. So what we're doing is we're creating a new variable called x, and we are going through list or LST one at a time, and we are giving the value to x, and then we can do something with it in the loop. So let's see it in action. Here we go. A, B, C, D, just like that. Something else that for loops allow us to do is count in between 2 values, count between a range of values. So the way that we can do this is if we do for, and then let's call it I in range. So range is a function that we haven't seen before. It's often used with for loops. So let's say we want the values between 1 and 5. And then print I. So this range function actually works quite similar to the list index system before. So we will start on 1. 1 will be the first value, and then we'll have 2, 3, 4, and then we will not have 5. We will stop before this value here. Let's see it in action. we get 1 to 4 like that, and then we can change this number to 8, and it goes up to 7. Now we can also add a third value in here, which is the step value, which is similar to what we had with the list as well. So we are skipping over 1 time. So if this range function takes the place of our list, surely it is itself a list, right? If we print out the value range 1 to 5 like this, we actually get something that looks a little strange. We get exactly what we put back in. Now this is because range is a class, and we'll go into a bit more detail on what that is later on. But for now, we just need to know that it is not quite a list. It works in a similar way, but it's not quite. So in order to turn it into a list, if we want a list of the values 1 to 4 inclusive, we will need to use the list function. Now this is very similar to the int, float, bool, and string functions we had before. So it's just converting a value into the data type. So I'm going to add a bit of space here so we can see it a bit better. And we're going to do list, open bracket, and add another close bracket to the end. So we've got the range item, we are turning it into a list, and then we are printing the list value like this. So for loops in Python work a little bit differently to other programming languages, and because this is a beginner's guide to programming in Python, I thought I'd show you the differences since they're quite important once you do get into the other languages. So here we've got a for loop in Python, and here we've got two different types of for loop in C++. Now don't worry too much about all of the syntax, but this here is the most common for loop in other languages. So we've got a variable that we are creating, and we're giving it the value of 0. And these semicolons are to separate these three different parts of the for loop. So we create a variable with a value. We can also use a variable that already exists, but let's not get into that for now. Then we've got a condition. So for loops in most languages work a little bit like while loops. So we've got a condition here. We create the value, and if this condition is true, then we go through the loop, and then we check the condition again. But at the end of every loop, we do this last bit here. And I++ is the same as doing plus equals 1. Plus is just plus equals 1. So I equals 0, we go through. I equals true. I equals 0. If the condition is true, then we go through this and we add 1 to I. And then if the condition is true, go through this and so on. Now, in order to print something in C++, it looks a little strange. So I've just made what's called a function here, so I can use this using the print statement here. And we'll be looking a bit more at how to do that in Python in the next video. But for now, we should just know that this is how you would say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in C++. And then we've got something a bit more similar to the standard for loop in Python. We create a list, actually called an array. But we've got multiple values here, and then we take int x, and then we use a colon to take one value at a time from list. So this will give us 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 10, 9, 8. So let's run the program. We need to change directory into number 6, and let's do lang ++ cfl.cpp -o cfl. TFL. So this is how we get the program to run. We've got the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 10, 9, 8 like that. That's all for this video. Again, if the C++ is a bit intimidating, don't worry for now. That's far ahead of where we are right now. But in the next video, we will be talking about functions.